You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it is Week 1 review, and all three teams, we got the hat trick this week. All three teams won, two in convincing manner, and another in a surprising manner. I'll talk about who falls under which category here. And then to close out the episode, I'll be reminding you all of the release dates for Battlefield 6 and Borderlands 4. In my opinion, the two biggest releases to come this year, obviously Call of Duty will always sell well. That one, I think it'll have a dip in sales this year, but that dip won't really be anything but a blip on the radar for them. But I'll dive deeper into that later on in the episode. So thank you all so much for being here. You can find me on the socials. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Matt Cave Podcast. You can find me on YouTube, The Matt Cave Podcast, all one word. And then you can also find me on TikTok. I think. Maybe. Search up The Matt Cave Podcast and you'll find me. I hope. I don't know. I'm new to TikTok, so give me a break. Cut me some slack. But I'm there too. I'll be posting some of my hotter takes from these episodes onto the platform there. So give me whatever it is, the updates and whatever else. I don't know. I don't know how TikTok works, but I'm there. All right, so that's it for introductions. Thank you all so much for being here, and let's dive into things. And I'm going to start with the late game, the very late game, the impossibly stupidly late game that no college team should ever have to play unless they travel to Hawaii. My goodness. ESPN. And it wasn't even ESPN this time. It was Fox. Fox, ESPN. I don't know who else needs to hear this, but Utah is not in the Pacific time zone. We're in the Mountain time zone. Thank you very much. And that is, I said it right so that they would understand it. Instead of saying mountain, I said mountain. We are in the Mountain time zone. We are an hour difference. We're an hour closer to you. So please, for the love of everything, there's not enough Diet Coke on this planet for any of us to stay up that late. Thank you. That was my TED Talk. Thank you all for being here. All right, so let's start with that game. And it was a game that I was a little wary about because it was a brand new offense for Utah. It was going into a UCLA team that is made up entirely of transfers for the most part. And there was just so much mystery, so much unknown going into this game. But one thing I forgot that is always a known factor is Utah's defense. Utah's defense showed up and showed out. They shut down Nico Iamaleava. Holy moly. Iamaleava, or Iamaleava, if you want to make the meme. He was 11 of 22, 136 yards, one touchdown, one interception, and he looked uncomfortable. He did not look like he even knew his own offense, and it was kind of fun to watch, really. Just because of all the off-season stuff and the stories that surrounded that quarterback, I personally took some perverse pleasure in watching that. The running game was non-existent for UCLA. Their leading rusher was their quarterback, who, when he was running for his life. Their running back, their best running back, was Javian Thomas with 7 carries for 17 yards. Yeah, so I would say Utah's defense definitely was the story of this game. The offense, well, it's the jury's still out. And that's what's going to be the common thread throughout this week is the jury's out on all of the offenses. Whether it's Utah State, BYU, or Utah, the jury's out. Utah's offense clicked at times, and then at other times it felt like Devin Dampier versus the world. And it felt like that because that was the way that Devin Dampier plays. I don't know how that's going to work against better competition because let's face it, UCLA stinks. They stink. They are not a good squad. I don't know if they're going to win more than 2 games this year. Utah, the offensive line, as advertised. Holy Moses, they just moved those guys at will. It's just like, no, you're not going to be here. You're going to be 5 yards back. No, you're not going to be rushing my quarterback. You're just going to be flat on your butt on the ground. That was the Utah offensive line in this game. It was awesome to watch. Devin Dampier's stat line, 21 to 25, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, and 0 fumbles. My big thing coming into this season is he was a bit of a turnover magnet. In this first game, he took care of the ball. He placed the ball very well. I will also say this. He had one completion above 20 yards, and that was to Tobias Merriweather. So keep an eye on that. The deep ball wasn't there in this game. We'll have to see as we move forward. That's one thing that bit Utah last year was they had no deep passing game, and so teams could stack 10 guys in the box and just be like, all right, we're going to have to let you see what your receivers and your quarterback can do. Another thing to look for is there was a lot of two-way playing for Smith Snowden and Lander Barton. Really cool. Really fun to watch. Both guys can do it, but Lander Barton specifically plays a very physical position on the defensive side of the ball. Smith Snowden, not so much. But Smith Snowden is playing more of a running back role, like Corene Reed. Got to be careful with the usage there. I know that Utah will be. This is not going to be news to them. But that is definitely something to watch moving forward. Lander Barton is too important to that defense to use too often on the offense. Smith Snowden, same thing. He's their number one cornerback. So while seeing those guys on the offensive side of the ball is really fun and an extra film for other teams to watch, that's something that worries me as a Utah supporter, except for in the game against BYU. Again, the defense, outstanding stuff. They had 4 sacks on Nico Iamaleava. John Henry Daly had 2 of them. Logan Fano had another one, and then they split the difference between Carson Kafusi and Cash Dillon for the 4th. 5 tackles for loss, and they just made it so they didn't even really need to do any passes defensed in this entire game because Nico Iamaleava was always off his spot. He was never able to get a ball where he wanted it for like 95% of his throws. So Utah's defense as advertised. The rushing game as advertised. Nobody over 100 yards. A little bit heavy on the Devin Dampier side of things for my liking. He had 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Wayshawn Parker is probably your home run hitter out of the backfield, and Naquari Rogers, 16 carries, 61 yards. He's more of the ground and pound guy, at least from what I could tell from just game 1. Overall, Utah dominated this game. It was never a contest. End of first quarter, it was 13-0. At one point, it was 23-7, and then it was just out of hand from that point forward. UCLA, not a very good team. Not a very good team. I was worried over nothing. So congratulations to Kyle Whittingham. Fantastic start to what Utah is hoping is going to be a storybook ending to his career. A lot of insiders are saying this is it for Kyle Whittingham, but who knows? Who really knows what's going on inside of Kyle Whittingham's head? Not even his wife knows. So we'll see what happens there, but 43-10 final score. Utah demolishes UCLA, which will probably vault them into the top 25, I would imagine. All right, Utah State, you are up. And they kicked off the season at home against UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso. Thank you very much. The Miners, who have never really been that good at football. But hey, you play who's on the schedule, right? So this game was closer in the first half than not even than I was expecting. I was expecting a pretty close first half. What I was not expecting was Utah State not turning the ball over. They didn't turn the ball over once in this game. Bryson Barnes, 19-28, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles. BYU transfer Miles Davis, 12 carries, 88 yards, 1 touchdown, but do not let that stat line fool you. He had 1 run of 58 yards. You remove that from the equation, that's 11 carries for 30 yards. Something to worry about moving forward for Utah State. That running game is going to be either a home run or nothing, from what I saw in this game. Receiving core, who's going to be catching the ball? Brock Lane got behind the defense for a deep ball for 1 catch, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Miles Davis out of the backfield, 6 catches, 61 yards. His long was 30, so if you remove that from the occasion, it's 5 catches for 31. So the offense was more moving the ball down the field, and then they would hit a home run. That's not sustainable. It's not reliable. But it got the job done against an overmatched UTEP team who turned the ball over and honestly, this defense for Utah State is much improved. It's basically what you would expect from a Bronco Mendenhall defense. Solid, bend but don't break, cause the occasional turnover, get home for dinner. That's really Bronco Mendenhall's MO on the defensive side of the ball. They had 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 2 passes defensed. So that's a very solid afternoon for the Aggies. And by the way, Utah State, what is with those helmets? I get it. Aggies, agriculturals, cows. Man, I do not like those helmets. They're splotchy. Ugh. Anyway, Utah State gets the victory here, 28-16, off to a good start for the team. Bryson Barnes is looking more and more comfortable being the starting quarterback. He was named the starting quarterback. There was not any competition. He's not going to fight off any other transfers or anything like that. It's just Bryson Barnes' offense, and Miles Davis is the number 1 running back. So that's settled for Utah State after a few years where it seemed like it was whichever way the wind blew is really what it felt like for the quarterback position for this team. And now that it's settled, they do look a little bit better. Quarterback rating, by the way, for Bryson Barnes, 45.8. Not stellar, but good enough. And when you don't turn the ball over, you usually win the football game, and that's what happened for Utah State. So good stuff from Bronco Mendenhall and crew. They get off to a winning start, 1-0 at home. And now let's move it on along to the BYU Cougars. The game got off to the start I was expecting. It wasn't pretty for the first, basically, 12 minutes of the game. The defense took a little bit to get settled in. The offense was looking like how you would expect it to look like with a true freshman quarterback starting. But as the game went along, as the team settled into the flow of the game, and after that blocked field goal, which was always going to get blocked, it didn't matter who it bounced off of. It was probably going to bounce off of the kicker's offensive lineman, the back of his head. But once that happened, the game turned, and BYU just rolled. Final score was 69-0. Will Farron tied the all-time record for BYU for distance of a field goal, so that's pretty cool. Each quarterback had a quarterback rating over 53. That's pretty cool, too. Final stats for Bear Bachmeier in 2 quarters of work. 7 for 11. Go get your Slurpee. 97 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 0 fumbles. The 1 fumble lost was Parker Kingston on a punt return that I am sure is not going to happen again. Because looking at his body language after the turnover happened, he was very angry. And then on the very next punt return, he covered up both arms close to the body so it could not get punched out. And we're good from there. The passing stats, not stellar for the team. 12 of 18, 138 yards total. But they never really needed to throw the ball. They were never in a have-to-throw-it situation throughout the game because Portland State was just overmatched. Portland State is not a very good team. Obviously, they're FCS, and they still haven't scored a point in the entire season. They've played 8 full quarters. The running game, I was very impressed with the running game. 48 carries, 468 yards, 5 touchdowns. Bear Bachmeier carried the ball 5 times, 32 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then LJ Martin is a beast. He is even more well-built this season than he was last year, and you can tell. While Portland State still had fight in them, he was still breaking tackles and busting off big gains. He was patient in the run game. He was willing to wait for his blockers to develop. It's really fun to watch this backfield work. Javessa Dumuni was in mop-up time. He looked really good. I wanted to see more of Sione Moa, but they didn't need to. You didn't need to really see your number 2 running back. And so there was a lot of end-arounds. There was that really nifty triple reverse, dipsy-do dunkaroo, if I could quote the great Dick Vitale, with Cody Hagan, where he busted out that 57-yard gain for a touchdown, where it was just like, I'm going to hand it off to the running back. No, I'm not. I'm going to hand it off to Chase Roberts. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. I'm going to hand it off to Cody Hagan coming the other way. Now, will I think that play work against Power 4 competition? Absolutely not. The rush will get to the quarterback. by the time that happens. But against teams like Portland State, potentially against Stanford, East Carolina, maybe even Colorado, that could work. But as you get into the teeth of the schedule against Utah, that's just not going to work. So the offense overall just outmatched the opponent. I mean, they were bigger, they were stronger, they were faster, and they proved it with 468 rushing yards. As far as the receiving core goes and what I saw when Bear Bachmeier actually threw the ball, he underthrew a lot of passes. There was a couple of deep balls to Chase Roberts that could have hit had Bear thrown the ball a little bit higher, a little bit longer, so that will improve over time. But Chase Roberts' stat line, 1 catch, 4 yards, 1 touchdown. That's not really the storyline. The storyline here is Bear Bachmeier getting used to playing quarterback at this level. A couple of throws to Carson Ryan were great. One that was over the defender's shoulder, perfectly into Carson Ryan's hands. It did get bobbled, but eventually caught. So there is a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad from Bear Bachmeier. Another thing that I saw that I really liked was there were no hospital passes. Jake Retzlaff was the king of hospital passes. I've talked about that a lot. I didn't see a single one from Bear. In fact, the pass to Carson Ryan up the seam allowed Carson Ryan to protect himself once he made the catch. It forced him to sit down between 3 guys. And so that pass to his back hip instead of out in front of him made that play happen. So seeing that was very encouraging. That was really nice to see a quarterback placing a ball for a receiver where they are not putting their body on the line. I liked that a lot. I might be reading too much into that one throw, but that one throw was great. The special teams, fantastic. Every kickoff was through the end zone for a touchback. They didn't really need to punt. They punted once. And then as far as like the punt returning goes, that one fumble was really devastating. Honestly, I didn't like to see it because it was a great return, and then it just got punched out at the end. But the other returners, Carson Ryan didn't return a punt. I mean, it was number 20. I didn't get a good look at who it was, but it wasn't Carson Ryan. It was Kenan DeVries. That's right. That's who it was. Kenan DeVries, Parker Kingston returning punts. Tiger Bachmeier needs to run forward, not backwards, when he returns punts. But the punt return unit looked just as good as it did last year. And Will Farron, 9 for 9 extra points, 2 for 2 field goals, All-American candidate, Ray Guy Award winner, potentially. It's going to be a great year for Big Leg Will, Big Game Bill, however you want to call him. And then the one punt from Sam Vanderhaar went 40, 80 yards. So punting is in good hands as well. So the special teams was great. The defense, outstanding. The defense was outstanding. And a single guy wasn't the difference maker in this one. Talon Alfrey had a couple of great run support tackles. Then obviously Jack Kelly with the blocked kick returned for the touchdown. And then the stats running, BYU allowed -3 yards running. Passing, they allowed 56. Overall, they allowed 53 yards. And you're probably sitting there going, well, yeah, they played an FCS opponent. That's expected. It is expected, but not to this extent. Yeah, BYU is bigger, faster, stronger. Their team is deeper. They have better facilities, better coaching staff, better nutritionists, all this other stuff. But when you actually see this come together and everybody on the team was focused, there was celebrating going on the sideline, but LJ Martin, Bear Bachmeier, Chase Roberts, they were all engaged throughout the entire game, either with their helmet on or their helmet resting on the back of their head. They were engaged and they wanted to see the game. And the defense particularly wanted to keep that shutout. That is really important, and they did. So this was really encouraging for the season. Do I still think BYU is going to go 6-6? I do. The real test starts week 3 when they travel to East Carolina. That's the real test. Yeah, East Carolina is in the American Conference. Sure, they haven't really won double-digit games in recent memory, but it's still across the country. BYU has lost there before, and it's Bear Bachmeier's first road game. Lest we forget, East Carolina only lost to NC State by 7 in week 1. So there's that too. The reason I'm discounting the Stanford game is because it's at home, and that's always going to help a true freshman quarterback. So overall, it was a fun game to watch. It really was, unless you're a Portland State fan. But for BYU fans, for all of us, it was really fun to watch. It was a good game, solid overall after the first half of the first quarter. The rest of it was just a romp. It was a good time. And the crowd was there, engaged throughout the entire game. Everybody stuck around. It was really cool to see that it wasn't being treated as like an afternoon social. After halftime when it was 49-0, half the crowd didn't go home. The majority of the crowd was there, and it was a sellout crowd for an FCS opponent. That's really cool. So, as we look forward for our three teams, I'll start with BYU. Talked about it a little bit. Stanford at home. And make sure you got your Diet Cokes ready. This one is at 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time. That should be a victory. Stanford struggled against Hawaii. Hawaii just got blown out. So this should be a victory, just based off of everything. Stanford is probably going to come out with a little extra juice just because of the transfer of Tiger and Bear. But overall, I think BYU is just a better team. The defense is going to shut down Stanford. The special teams is going to show up again, and that should be enough to carry the young quarterback through to another victory at home. So that is what's coming up for BYU. What's coming up for Utah State and the Aggies? Well, you got to travel to College Station down there in Texas to face off against number 19 Texas A&M. There's not an upset in the offing here. The hope here is that the team can go down there, give it the old college try and come home with no injuries. That is the expectation for Utah State heading down to College Station against Texas A&M. That kick is on the SEC Network at 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Or not Eastern Time, Mountain Time. So at least Utah State will have their stuff done and dusted by around, you probably tune out of that one at like noon. So there's that one. And then Utah, they come home to face off against Cal Poly, 4 p.m. on ESPN+. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Iron out some more rust, or knock out some more rust, iron out some kinks and wrinkles, and everything will be honky-dory for the Utes against Cal Poly. So get out of that one healthy. That's the goal. Get the victory, get out of there healthy, and move on to the next week. All three teams looked really good this week, but this next week I don't think we'll get a hat trick. BYU and Utah will probably win their games. Utah most definitely will win their game. BYU probably will win theirs. Utah State, it will take a miracle upon miracles to come out of College Station with a victory. And let me tell you, Aggie fans, Bronco Mendenhall is not that coach. All right, let's move it on to the video games and release dates and reminders about why I'm excited for each game. In just under 2 weeks, we have Borderlands 4 releasing. That is September 12th, 2025, on PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X. And a disclaimer for any of you that own a Switch 2, never buy a AAA game on it. Elden Ring, Grand Theft Auto, Cyberpunk, Witcher, Borderlands, none of them. Don't buy any of those for the Switch 2 because your game's just not going to run. And if it does run, it's not going to be playable. So if you have a Switch 2, avoid buying any game that is not first-party Nintendo on it for a while. This is one of the many reasons why I never purchased first generation or first wave, whatever you want to call it, of a new console. Just don't do it. Wait, be patient. Let the kinks get ironed out, much like the University of Utah offense against Cal Poly. Let the kinks get ironed out here for the rest of the life cycle of the Switch 2. So, Borderlands 4. Now, this game, I love Borderlands. I've loved every single one. Tiny Tina's Wonderland, that one I've liked a lot less than the other ones. In my hierarchy, it goes Borderlands 2, Borderlands the pre-sequel, Borderlands 1, 3, and then Tiny Tina's. So that's kind of my hierarchy when it comes to the Borderlands games. There will be no villain in the universe as good as Handsome Jack, and I really hope that they don't try to make a villain like him or something that will try to get to that point. Just because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And That's what I'm hoping for. They tried to do something like a knockoff of online influencers, Twitch streamers, whatever you want to call it, with the twins in Borderlands 3. There's a lot of poop humor in it. That's why it's among my bottom games. Tiny Tina's, the reason it's down there is because it is like a Dungeons & Dragons knockoff, and so the weapons are more like crossbow and like magic related instead of like bullets flying, and so the trajectory of all the projectiles is different, and it just feels weird. Your gun lags behind enemies that move left to right, and it's not because of my sensitivity. I made sure of it. I jacked it up and I cranked it down low. It wasn't because of my sensitivity. It's just how it worked. And so that should be fixed with Borderlands 4. I don't see any reason why not. And so Borderlands 4, I'm very excited for. I'm going to be playing that Reinhardt character. He looks really fun. And I'm going to be playing all of them eventually. But the Reinhardt character with that giant shield that he has that he can carry around, definitely top of my list. So this game comes out in less than 2 weeks as of me recording this. September 12th, 2025 on your favorite system. Personally, I'm getting it on PC, but you can get it anywhere video games are sold. And now let's move it on to Battlefield 6. This game comes out a little less than a month after Borderlands 4 on October 10th. And oh man, you've heard me sing the praises of Battlefield 6 in the betas. This game is Battlefield is back when it comes to this game. Now, I want to say a few things when it comes to success in the modern age of gaming. A lot of people point to player count. Is your player count above a certain threshold? If it is not above that threshold, is it dead? Did it flop? Is it a failure? A healthy game to me, when it comes to the first-person shooter genre, has roughly, I want to say, 25 to 50,000 players online actively playing at any point, and that's just for Steam. That does not include Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, or Nintendo, whatever. And so, when it comes to Battlefield 6, it is going to be active across a lot of different storefronts as well. It's not just going to be Steam. It's not just going to be EA Origin, which they thankfully got rid of, I believe, last year, if not the year before. Long overdue. And it's going to be on the Epic Game Store as well. So there's a lot of different avenues for people to get this game, especially on PC, because it's also going to be on the Xbox Marketplace. And so this game is going to be active. There's crossplay enabled. It's going to be massive. There's going to be a lot of different guns. There's going to be different classes. There's going to be a lot of stuff to unlock. And then there's also going to be cosmetics for you to unlock on top of all of the different weapon attachments and stuff you can put on the vehicles. So this game is going to have a ton of content at release, but it's also going to be having a lot of updates as the game goes along. And it's not going to be paid DLC, which was a shock to me because this is being published by EA. A lot of people point to EA for the downfall of gaming or the state of gaming as it is right now. I don't. I point to mobile games, gacha games, all of that stuff, because boardrooms look at those games. They're cheap to make. They make a lot of money. Why do they make a lot of money? Because the game sucks, but the cosmetics look really cool, and then you can purchase additional game time, all this other garbage. And so that's what's ruined gaming. So what do I see as success for Battlefield 6? I see a steady player count at above those numbers I mentioned, 25 to 50,000 players. That's healthy to me. And if it does dip down to like 20,000, no, the game's not dead. It's just at an ebb. Maybe another game came out. Maybe people are trying out the new Call of Duty. Maybe people have circled back to like the finals or to Fortnite or to Call of Duty, something like that. And so Battlefield 6 and Borderlands 4 are my two games to close out this year that I'm definitely looking forward to getting. And I will be putting a lot of time into these games. I have been keeping myself away from multiplayer experiences for now, just so I don't burn myself out before these games come. And that's by design. And so I'm very excited for this. I cannot wait for Battlefield 6. Borderlands 4 is going to be just a delight to play. And honestly, if anybody out there listening is going to be playing those games, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. All right, everybody, that is the episode for this week. Let me know your thoughts as to far as how you thought the games went for BYU, Utah, and Utah State, if I was off the mark, if I was on the mark, and if you are looking forward to any game this year that I haven't mentioned. Please let me know on the socials, on Facebook and Instagram, even TikTok. And I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.